Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Sessions with Paola. I am here today with this wonderful human who I met through a colleague and a friend of ours, Naomi. And when we met, I was actually doing an episode, a segment for Spanish television. And it was really funny because Zen and I had a little conversation on the side. As I was filming, we were talking about sex toys, and they didn't want me to mention the word clitoris. So I was really confused. I'm like, how are we gonna talk about pleasure and sex toys if I can mention the word clitoris? And I was also playing around with this big purple vibrator, and the production team from the Latino TV, they said, oh, no. We can't show that one because men may be intimidated by it. So her and I connected because we were talking about how in our Latina culture, when we think about masturbation, self-exploration, toys, this is not something that's talked about openly. And I find that many men are a little bit intimidated in bringing in a toy. So Sen is here today to share her knowledge with us about toys. And I want to use the quote of Dirty Lola. She says that toys are not meant to replace human interactions or human touch, but they are wellness tools, which I love this, guys. It is not a replacement, but an enhancer. So Sen, welcome. So tell us a little bit, what got you interested in working with adult sexuality? What is it like to work so we can find her at Toys Tonight? Tell us a little bit about your journey in that field.
So I've been working there about a year now, and I'm the manager. What got me into that was literally just like exploring. I was like, oh wow, this sex store is really close by me, and I was just really interested in the variety that was around. I was like, I didn't even know that there were this many options to pleasure a man or a woman, because we even sell a lot of men's toys, strokers for men, different types of toys for male pleasure, because men deserve pleasure too. And a lot of times, people will come in the store couples will come in the store and the men are like, yeah, we're only getting something for her. And I'm like, are you sure you don't want anything for you? And they're like a little taken aback because they're like, there's nothing in here for me. I'm like, well, yeah, there's a lot for you. Masturbation, exploratory masturbation is not only for women, and it doesn't replace a partner either. It just helps you find what you could like even more, or something even you might be scared to try with your partner. You can do it on your own, and you'll find out whether you're comfortable with it or not.
As I'm thinking a little bit about, because parents, Dominican, Cuban, and Salvadorian. So wow, what a mix. And I wonder, I'm Colombian, and in my culture, in my upbringing, masturbation, self-exploration, or self-pleasure was never talked about. This was not something that was mentioned. And you guys, I have to disclose that I started to learn about this in my 30s when I went to sex therapy school. So I wonder, when it comes to your upbringing, was that something that was openly talked about for you?
On top of being raised by Latino people, I was also raised Jehovah's Witness. So we were heavily discouraged from any form of masturbation, any form of self-pleasure because of God.
Okay. So
on
the
top
message
of culture
was,
and religion,
okay,
it was
so
very like, don't touch yourself, don't touch each other until you're married.
Wow.
You should not be worried about sexual pleasure until you're ready to make babies. Mm-hmm. So there's, for a lot of us, whether it's for religious reasons or cultural reasons, have such a large gap in our understanding of sex and pleasure and the ways that we can be pleasured through sex, because sex is a primal instinct. Everybody has the sexual urges, but they, not all of us even know what feels good to satiate those urges. Mm-hmm. So it takes a lot of research. First of all, like literally, Google is your best friend. Porn is not your best friend.
Okay, tell us about that. Google is your best friend. Porn is not our best friend.
Reading about different forms of pleasure and watching porn are two very different things. Because porn is not always realistic. It's not always, like unethical porn. I believe in ethical porn. I believe in, someone choosing to create content and go out of their way to distribute it and being paid directly for the content they're creating. Mm-hmm. That's a very ethical way of consuming porn and creating porn, because this is actually pleasure-based. You're not walking into a studio like, okay, what am I doing today? You're figuring out, okay, what am I gonna do to pleasure myself? What am I going to do to pleasure my partner? Not just, all right, well, this is who you're having sex with, and this is how you're going to do it, and you're going to be done. Porn doesn't show that much intimacy. Porn doesn't show any communication. Porn is not like, hey, pause. Are you okay with this? Are you in pain? That's really important in real life, in real sexual experiences. And that's something that you don't learn watching porn. You learn that in either real life or reading about consent, about pleasure, about different things, or having conversations with people, open conversations with people.
Music to my ears. And something, you guys, that's so important for us to know, but I am always surprised by the amount of women that don't know that 75% of women can mostly have an orgasm through clitoral stimulation. So many women walk around thinking there's something wrong with me, I must be broken because I can't have an orgasm through penetrative sex. And coming from a machista culture, the man may say, well, there must be something wrong with you because everybody that I've been with, right, I'm doing it right. So I think, and when you talk about porn, it bypasses this really important part of sexual encounters, consent being a huge part, lubrication, right? All of these important things. So I'm so glad that you're bringing that up. And how do we communicate what we want? How do we know what that is if we don't explore our bodies? So for those people tend to have a really hard time, just some of the couples that you talk about that come in and they're like, I don't really know, or the men that are like, oh, there are toys for me. People that are having a challenging time, that are watching us from home, and they're like, oh, I want a toy, but this is just too overwhelming. And there's some challenges that they're experiencing. What do you want to tell them? What do you want them to know?
A toy's not a threat.
A toy's not a threat.
And a toy's not going to break your heart, so there's no reason to be scared. A toy is a choice. A toy is not your partner. A toy is not replacing you or your partner for whomever. A toy is just a way to find out what you enjoy more, very simply. And then there's also, not a toy, but toys in general. There's so many different types of toys. Even just looking at toys, you can be like, oh my God, I didn't even know I could try that. And then with or without the toy, you can go home and try that. But just knowing about toys, seeing toys, being around toys, talking about toys, I think personally is an important part of wellness, important part of sexual education for yourself and for others. Or even like, oh my God, I saw a toy that does this. Do you want to try that with or without the toy? Just it's a way to enhance creativity. Like you can get a lot more creative with sex when you have toys involved. Because there's only so many ways you can, especially penetrative sex, there's only so many positions you can be in.
Yes, and so, one of the most common things that show up in my practice is couples that have been in a long-term relationship, because as Alexandra Solomon says, she says, we're a culture that we're obsessed with romance, but we're not so obsessed with how to keep romance alive, right? I want to see what happens in the rom-coms. I want to see what happens after people get married, after they have this amazing date,
after they're happy
kiss in the rain. What happens after? Because that's where I come in, right? So I think this idea of enhancing creativity is really, really important. So talking about that, when someone wants to choose a toy, how do they know if they like vibration versus suction? What are some tips that you can give us for them to start to explore, what do they like, what they don't like?
So in general, I always ask, like, have you ever had a toy before? Or have you ever engaged in any type of play that would kind of be the way this toy works? So like, for example, like a suction toy, like you said. A suction toy is relatively new technology, and it's not even really suction. It's an air chamber. So it's like air spinning around and it pulls on the clitoris. So it stimulates the nerve. It's similar to...
Maybe this could help. That's Lola. We have full consent to use her.
Yes, we do. Mm-hmm. So you would put the suction toy right up here, and it creates like an air chamber that feels like a suction. So it pulls and stimulates the clitoris. However, if you're someone who's a little more sensitive, that might be better for you. Just because a vibrator is steady stimulation. Like that air chamber is like swirling, kind of like, it lets up a little. A vibrator is constant, intense, unless you're like using maybe like a pattern mode, but even then most people don't start off with those, Mm-hmm. So like, I would recommend a vibrator to someone who's like, I really need intense clitoral stimulation. I've never had a penetrative orgasm and I want to be able to orgasm while being penetrated. All right, let's get you a really strong bullet and your partner can hold it on the clit, while you're being penetrated. Or if you're like, I want to be able to have my clit stimulated while being penetrated, but I'm cool, like, I orgasm penetratively pretty often. I'm like, well, maybe you can have a nice suction toy, maybe even on a pattern setting, because then it's more teasing than intensifying stimulation. There's so many different things that you can do just with a specific type of toy.
Love it. Guys, let's talk a little bit about anal play, right? And this is all genders or sexual orientations. A lot of people like anal play regardless. And so for someone that's beginning to explore anal play, what are some tips that you can give us? How could they start? You have it. It's there. You don't even need
Don't be scared of a finger. And it doesn't even have to be like actually during masturbation. You can just be like, okay, does my finger fit? Does that feel, does my body tighten up when I do that? Because then even if you're just putting in a finger, then your body will start to get used to the fullness feeling. And then you're like, all right, I'm not scared anymore. And then, you can make your way to a plug, definitely with lots of lube. There's no such thing as too much lube for the anus because contrary to popular belief, the anus is not self-lubricating. The only lubrication that's coming out of there is sweat. So people are like, well, I've told people that at work and they're like, so what was coming out? And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know. But it wasn't, they were not being lubricated. I don't know what that was, friend, but I don't know. I'm like, please use lube. A lot of lube, lots of lube.
Yes, guys, lube.
Ooh,
yes,
also,
please.
I always recommend, if you're gonna ever do anal play, if you've never tried it before, like I said, your body gets scared. Your body will automatically tense up and your muscles will tense up. Have an orgasm first. Your body will be already more at rest, more relaxed. Your muscles will be more relaxed. So before even trying to put anything in your butt, make sure you have an orgasm first.
Before you put anything in your butt, make sure you have an orgasm first. Lovely advice. Guys, so thinking a little bit about lubrication, because I think, something that sometimes I encounter in my practice is, well, she wasn't lubricated, therefore I'm not doing a good enough job, or she doesn't like me, or she doesn't love me. And guys, just like you lose your erection here and there, and it has nothing to do with us liking your wanting you or loving you, right? Like the same thing happens. So ladies, if you're feeling that maybe lubrication is not flowing as much, please don't be shy. And yes, use lubrication. Lubrication is our wonderful friend. When it comes to lubrication, what are some lubes that may be better for certain toys or certain activities? What can you tell us about that, Sen?
So in general, water-based lube is like a standard because, our bodies are made of water. They would probably be the safest if you have any like skin irritation issues. Of course, in my opinion, there is not typically a such thing as too much lube for vaginal sex if you have a vaginal dryness issue. If your vagina tends to be dry, what I would recommend is you make sure you put a little bit of lube, of course, in your hand all over the penetrative partner's, shaft. And then for you, if you feel like even your vaginal canal is dry, you can put a little bit on your finger and rub it around inside just to pre-lubricate. Because even if your partner is all lubed up, if you're still dry inside, that could still hurt. You could still be in pain. It could still deter you from enjoying your sexual experience. And you want to enjoy sex. You don't want to be frustrated or be upset when you're having sex. Then it's, it defeats the purpose. Sex is for enjoyment and pleasure for both parties.
Absolutely. I personally like Liquid. I like that brand. I like the water-based, but I also like the silicone-based. There's one, I can't remember what's called, Silver, one of them. But anyone that you particularly like, and guys, of course, everybody's going to like different, but anyone that you recommend for us that you like more than others?
So I like the pure lubes, the water-based ones, but mostly because it's like a squeeze bottle and it's really hard to waste. It lasts pretty long. So like one little drop is like a whole little puddle in your hand. I don't even know how, but it lasts really long, and it's a really good lube because Pure is like a German brand, so it's like well formulated. But specifically for the water-based of those. For silicone, I really enjoy Uber Lube. It's made of like 4 different kinds of silicone and like vitamin E. So if you're prone to like tears in your anal area, that can help, heal up the area as well a little quicker, or just avoid tears. So
Love
I like
it.
that one.
Awesome. And Sen, what do you find? A lot of customers come to you, a lot of people, and I love, how you introduce all of them. This is why I really like Toys Tonight, you guys, because you go in there and sometimes my clients are like, oh, it's so overwhelming. You walk in and there's so much variety that it's like, oh, where do you start? But they just kind of pull you and tell you, hey, just like this wonderful human, beautiful woman is telling us, right? Just like, hey, this is what works. So I really like that. So don't be afraid, because there's a couple of stores in the city where you're going to be guided into what works for you. Any common things that you find, fears or misconceptions when people come in and are trying to buy a toy, not only as individuals, but as a couple, anything that you see in your store?
Well, one of the biggest is like what we've already talked about, that, you know, men feeling very replaced easily. Like they'll walk in and be like, well, you don't even need a man anymore. And we're like, well, if we're being honest, we didn't need him in the first place. However, if you're doing right, if you're being nice, you'll be kept around. Don't worry, you know?
Exactly.
But the weirdest one that I've heard is very recent. And now keep in mind, the rose is our bestseller because the internet, because of a lot of different things, but people love the rose. Someone came in maybe a couple of weeks ago and walked in and was like, oh, I saw this on Facebook the other day. Some girl said it gave her cancer. And I was like, excuse me? She pulls up the Facebook post and the girl's like, yeah, I'm a virgin. The only thing I've ever done is use the rose and I have like cervical cancer. I was like, I don't think that that's what her doctor told her. The only thing in the rose is the same battery that's in your phone. So if the rose gave you cancer, your phone got just as much culpability. Mm-hmm. So that's like that's random and new, and like I've kept hearing it more and more often as of recently. So that's not true. It's just the lithium battery, same one that's in your iPhone, same one that's in any phone, any other toy. I don't think it's very random.
Yeah,
very
guys.
odd.
And this is one of my goals, right? To really have people, like I said, just debunk a lot of myths, because unfortunately we live in a world where there's so much information and lots of it is misinformation. So thank you so much for joining us today. How could people find you? Where are you guys located?
So I'm the manager of the Wynwood location of Toys Tonight. It's located at 203 Northwest 36th Street, Miami, Florida, 33127. We also have 2 other locations. Our most recently opened is a Biscayne location. It's 8330 Biscayne Boulevard. And the South Beach location is 1637 Washington Ave. But of course, you can find me at Wynwood.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Remember, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do. Sessions with Paola. And I believe in the power of community. So if you know anyone out there that wants a little bit more information in all of this wonderful wiseness that we're bringing in, please share it with them. Gracias y bienvenidos.